All right, y'all. It is season 4 of the LaRae Infinity Let's Talk podcast. And as you see, we're in studio. You can see the guests, you can see me, and you can't just hear us. So we're leveling up because this season it's called The Dynamics of Women. And I'm here with my guest. And before we dive into how we met and everything we've done, I want you to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Angelica Robles. I'm 40 years old. My zodiac sign is a Sag. And today I'm going to share my story of tragedy to resilience. And hopefully it can touch, move, and inspire you. And you are listening to the LaRae Infinity Let's Talk podcast, season 4, The Dynamics of Women.
Yes. Okay, so here we are, y'all. So the way I met this amazing woman is random. I was on the board for Nerdy Girl Success, right?
Right.
And you were one of the speakers
I
on the
was.
panel
Mhm.
that I moderated. And then afterwards, you done met Mama Harris. Everybody knows,
Yes.
shout out to Mama Harris.
I love Mama Harris.
So everybody knows Mama Harris, and we all went out to eat. The board members, some of the people that were speakers and stuff, and we sat next to each other or around each other, close to each other, and we clicked. And I was like, "Oh, I got to have you on the podcast, on the radio show. We got to stay friends forever." All this stuff, and you have this amazing story, so I'm really excited about diving into it. Before we do that, I want to play a game with you.
Okay.
So it's just word association.
Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Hey, y'all. I just want to give you the heads up. There is definitely cursing, adult content, and there will be triggers in this episode as we look at and celebrate the journeys and the walks of women. Let's talk for real.
Okay.
So this podcast focuses on like all women from all walks of life, how we grow, how we navigate, how we impact the world that we live in, and to tell our often untold story. And that can often be challenging, especially like, you know, when we're in the light of speaking all the time. So I'm really excited to do this because like the impacts of women, it's profound. And it goes beyond just our micro, but it's macro. Everything we do has a ripple effect on the world. And I'm excited to sit and just, you know, share your story and your journey and everything that we're doing. So we're going to get started. And I just want you to talk to me about like where you grew up and how that was for you.
Ooh, okay. So I grew up in the west side of Chicago, uh, pretty much the Mexican hood. That's what I associate it with. West side. Chicago is a very segregated city, as everyone knows, or if you don't know, it is. And races just don't mix.
Yeah.
We all have our neighborhoods and we stay in our neighborhoods. And it's a sad reality, but I grew up in the Mexican neighborhood and I grew up in the hood. And I went to Martinez, which at the time where I was in high school had the highest pregnancy rate in the country.
Ooh.
So being pregnant was actually a good thing because they had integrated child development classes,
Daycare.
and child development classes into the curriculum so that the girls who were getting pregnant can just drop off the kids and go to school.
Wow.
And the age where everyone was getting pregnant was 15, 16, which was sophomore year.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in the hood, super, super low income, very crime orientated, very cartel driven, gang related. I mean, we were ducking.
When you say like low income, right? I feel like that's a word that like we have as adults. But when you were a kid, did you realize you were low income?
I realized I was low income based on where we were living, right? Because as a teenager, you explore out of Chicago and you see the nice areas and you see the nice houses and the nice schools. I was a soccer player. I grew up playing soccer my whole life. So we would go to the nice neighborhoods.
And you're like, oh, okay.
And
this
I
looks
was like,
different.
oh, this is nice, you know? And I mean, we would just go to these high schools where even just their fields were just, they had nicer grass, you know? And so no, you know that it was very well apparent that we were going to a school that had money. Most of the kids were white. They just had nicer gear. They just had more skills because they were doing
They have the
club.
time and
They
the
had the
investment and the
time and the
clinics.
investment, and they had the nicer cars and the nicer I remember the balls were even shinier, and we were like, "Yo, our balls are just dirty," you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was very evident to us that we came from a neighborhood which was very low income, lots of populated schools, and obviously the neighborhood was just rough. There
Yeah.
was lots of gang activity, lots of pregnancy, lots of violence. Violence was a part of our upbringing,
Yeah.
and losing our friends to gang violence or drug warfare was the norm for us. We grew up in this environment where it became normal. So,
When you were in school and all like the gang violence and everything else, did you expect to not get pregnant and make it out? Or was it around like maybe I will?
yeah, that's a great question, actually. So, my parents are immigrants. They came from Mexico
What part?
and Guadalajara.
All right, shout out.
Shout out to Guadalajara. I actually lived in Mexico for 5 years.
Nice.
For those that don't know, it's in the book. And my parents worked, and they worked long hours. So we practically raised ourselves,
Latchkeys.
latchkid kids, and it was a different generation, right? Because we weren't getting in trouble because we knew our parents were at work trying to put food on the table. And I'm the youngest of four. But growing up in Chicago, there was three of us, and it was rough, and coming Cicero is an immigrant city.
Mhm.
It's a suburb of Chicago. Most of the people that live in Cicero are Mexican immigrants that came from obviously Mexico and immigrated to the US to try to make a better life for themselves. So we had Black kids and we had Asian kids, but I kid you not, I never interacted with an Indian person from India until I
Mm.
went to college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you think about those interactions, I think that goes across a lot of the United States, or at least what I know of. Like I'm a military brat. So a lot of my stuff was the isms of rank, right? But prior like outside of that, I know a lot of people that didn't interact with the black person outside of the narrative of BET, or a Mexican person outside of what somebody told you that a Mexican, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
So,
crazy. It
yeah,
blows my mind.
yeah. So, as you progress, what happens next? You move on out of high school, and I'm assuming, did you get pregnant in high school? What
I
happened?
did not get pregnant, and I have to say I did not get pregnant because I was involved in sports.
Mhm.
And when you're involved in sports, it's school, training, games and all that. And also I grew up in a hardcore Catholic household where our mother was like, if you have sex, the ground will open and you will be swallowed to hell. I mean, it literally was like that where
Yeah.
we grew up in this fear of sex. We didn't know what sex was. We never spoke of it. It was almost something that we learned from school and
Mhm.
other classmates.
Mhm.
So yeah, I did not get pregnant.
Good. Okay, so then
I
what
got
was
pregnant
next?
later.
Yo You're a mama now, but, like,
Right.
so what happened after high school?
So I think one of the things that's huge to culminate and talk about high school was, so when I was 15, I was dating my high school sweetheart,
Mhm.
and his sister went on a first date with a young man she had met.
Okay.
And
How old was the
she
sister?
she was 21 at the time.
Okay.
And she ended up being murdered, dismembered, and decapitated.
Your boyfriend's sister.
Sister.
Okay.
And that was probably the worst possible feeling that I probably went through as a 15-year-old. Not only seeing my boyfriend deal with it, but the effect that that had on our mental health
Yeah.
was detrimental. And from that instant, I knew what anger was and anxiety and what be feeling unfit or feeling detached, if that makes any sense,
Yeah.
because it was very difficult for us to handle. She went missing for a week, and then another week passed, and then they found her head, and it was severely decomposed. And the only reason they were able to identify her was because she was wearing braces.
God damn.
So the story goes, she went on a first date. The young man ended up being part of a gang and also the cartel,
Yeah.
and he owed money to the cartel.
Wow.
So somebody had put a ransom on him to kill him. But because she was with him, she was at the wrong time,
Circumstance.
at the wrong place, and she ended up getting killed as well. And this ended up being one of the most heinous cases in Chicago history. You can look it up. And it's crazy how life works because the judge that ended up trying the case, I ended up working for her later on after I graduated college. It's a crazy, yes, it's all in the book. It's almost like God chooses people to be warriors in life,
Yeah.
and then it all just interconnects in the universe. I mean, even the ending to my book.
Yeah.
So
Do you feel like a warrior?
yeah. Oh yeah.
And do you feel like that was a start point?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
the impact of that was the trajectory that, like, not started your life,
Yeah.
but really started moving forward. So
Mhm.
after this murder,
Mhm.
did you stay with your boyfriend? Did you leave and go
No,
to
we
college?
broke up. I left to college. I went to University of Illinois, Champaign, fighting Illini,
What
and
a what?
fighting Illini.
Illini?
Illini, I know.
Okay, this is northern shit. We just have
Crazy, I know.
badgers and stuff.
Well, we used to be chiefs, but
Oh, yeah,
because
you
of
gotta
the
get rid of
racial
that.
profiling and all
Yeah.
that stuff, they got rid of that after I graduated.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, I went to college and I told myself I'm going to study forensic psychology. Forensic psychology was just budding back then, and for those that you know, I'm 40 now, so it was just budding. Now it's very rampant.
And forensic psychology, you watch Bones?
Yes,
Is it like that?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. And so I got a bachelor's in forensic psychology and chemistry, and I wanted to go work for the government
Mhm.
because I wanted to know what causes somebody to kill somebody, cut their head off and limbs, drain their blood, and just go and throw body parts in the north side, south side, west side of Chicago for $2,000.
Did the boyfriend did the boyfriend live?
Oh no,
Oh,
no.
they just took them both out.
They took them both out and they found his leg floating in the Chicago River. And the only reason why he was able to be identified is because he had a tattoo on his calf.
Mm,
But the story goes that the cartel will do things like this to send out messages
like, don't owe us
like,
money.
"Don't fuck with us,"
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
blank.
I
Yeah.
mean, you always think about, like, cartel and mafia and gangs and all that kinda stuff. What we now profile as what? Organized crime, and I guess
Organized crime, white collar crime, for
white
those that don't know.
white collar crime
Cartel crime is white collar crime. Anything over $25,000 in exchange is considered white collar crime.
and blue collar is under that.
Yes.
Okay.
So corporate fraud has to be over $25,000. And if we all know about the cartel, cartels are moving millions of dollars around. So they're
Yeah.
not blue collar. They look blue collar, but they're white collar
Yeah.
crime. Business owners, big CEOs, moguls. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't know that, which is another great combo to get into.
Yeah, definitely. So you're in college, you're studying this forensic, I'm gonna call it bones. You're
Yeah.
studying the bones type shit, right?
Mhm.
What do you do with it at that point? Do you realize that you love it and you're gonna keep going, or you're like, this shit ain't for me? I'm gonna
Yeah.
XYZ.
Yeah. No, so it's kind of interesting. I was going to go do pre-med. My
Yeah.
parents wanted me to be a doctor. I wanted to go work for the government, become an interrogator, profiler. And, of course, my family wasn't too happy about that. What you mean you're going to do that? You need to be a doctor, sit behind a desk and have a 9 to 5. And I didn't
The
want that.
American
The
dream.
American
That a lot
dream.
of, parents from other countries, that's like they work hard so their
Yeah.
kid can do X,
Right.
right?
And I was the black sheep of the family. My sister, she's an engineer. She's an executive for oil and gas. My brother was a head of finance for Ford. And of course, here I am wanting to go work for the government. And so I did. So I ended up working at the uh, police department in Champaign.
You were the police?
Well, I was an intern
Oh.
because I wanted to expose myself to dead bodies. I wanted to expose myself to crime, and I wanted to mentally and physically prepare myself for what was to come.
Mm.
And for a college student, everybody's drinking and partying. I was not doing any of that. I knew that I had to set myself apart because when I did go work for the government, it was going to have to be, it was survival of the fittest. Not
Mhm.
only was I already out of, the perfect, let's say FBI profile, I'm Hispanic, I'm a woman, but I have to bring it. I had to have, the grades, I had to have the test scores, and I had to have the experience to stand out from the thousands of applications.
Yeah.
So
In retrospect, in that little micro dose of what you said, is there anything you feel like you would have done differently? Would you have partied a little bit more? Would you have
I wish I did.
Yeah.
I wish I did. I was celibate for the 3 years I was in college. I was
So after
celibate.
the last boyfriend and you were in college?
Yeah, yeah. I
Wow.
was I was celibate, no drinking, no party. I was always a DD. And then I ended up getting a job where I was what is it? An emergency responder for advocate for kids. So I was a crisis worker.
Ooh.
So I would get calls, like I had a little pager, and I would get called in the middle of the night to go pick up a juvenile that was either having a fight with their parents and they either had to go to juvie or they needed an overnight arrangement.
Mhm.
So I mean, in the cornfield in Illinois, these kids would jump out of the car and just run in the cornfield. And I would be like, all right, I'm going home. I'm not gonna go chase you. But again, it was trying to get experience on trauma and emergency situations because I needed all this to put in my resume so they could say, wow, she wasn't partying, she wasn't drinking, she was out here chasing kids, she was out here following the investigators and interrogators at the police department, exposing herself to crime and investigation techniques and
Mhm.
tactics.
What
So
was your hashtag goal? Like, is your, like people, what is it, the big hairy or audacious goal, whatever that shit is. But like, what was your goal? Because, it's a lot of kids, I guess you could say, or young adults, it's a moving target, right? It's like, "Ah, I think I want to do that. I'm going to try it," especially for millennials, which we both are 37, 40.
yeah.
But what was your goal? That's super focused.
My goal, I've said this before, I chose work based on anger and trying to heal,
Mm.
right? But I wanted to be an interrogator for the government. I wanted to be a profiler for the government.
So that was the goal.
That
What you
was the
said earlier
ghost.
was that
Yeah.
that's where you were going. And you knew
Yeah.
those were the things you needed to
Yeah.
get
I,
there.
I knew that I needed to do things that nobody else was doing at the time.
Mhm.
When you're in college, you're trying to survive and you're partying and you're, drinking
Yeah.
and you're experimenting, sexually, emotionally with
All of
all
it.
types of stuff.
All types of
And
shit.
and I didn't do any of that.
Wow.
But because I was laser focused on what I wanted.
So when you got what
So,
you wanted, so fast forward, you're an interrogator now. How
well,
was
I was
that
undercover
process?
agent first.
Wait, what? Okay, go back.
Yeah.
Okay. You're focused, you're doing all that stuff. You become what?
So I say this in the book. So you can't apply to any government agency until you're 23. So I graduated
Interesting.
college at 21. So
Uh-huh.
I had 2 years to do something. So in those 2 years, I went and I worked for DCFS in Chicago, which is Child Protective Services here.
Okay.
That was probably the most humbling, hardest part of my life. I used to go and pull kids out of their homes.
Yeah.
And that was rough because in Chicago, the work is endless and and it will never end. It's almost like
Yeah.
the cartel here.
Yeah.
And that was rough. I did that. And in the midst of that, I ended up doing criminal counseling for people who are considered unfit to stand trial. So legally insane. So not guilty due to insanity,
Mm.
which is what the killer of my friend had tried
To
to
plead.
plead.
It's apparently a common
It's a
thing.
thing. I
Like,
mean, R. Kelly tried it too, and then,
oh,
we
R.
we know
Kelly.
how that went.
Right. He's still
And
blaming folks.
right, right. And so the interesting thing about it is when I switched over to working with the mentally ill,
Mhm.
unfit to stand trial people, that's when I ended up seeing Judge Lampkin. Judge Lampkin had been the judge who set my friend's killer to the death penalty.
Mhm.
So he did get caught and he was given the death penalty.
Mhm.
But in 2006, the governor abolished the death penalty in the state of Illinois.
Mhm.
So everybody sitting on death row is still now in life in prison.
Wow.
So yeah. So tax dollars.
All
Yeah.
that's the prison pipeline is
Right. That's a whole different
a whole
story.
that could be its own podcast.
Podcast.
Like
Right.
literally, one
Right.
day I'm gonna do true crimes. I just don't have all the stuff together to do it. But like,
Yeah, we could totally do it.
yeah, true. Oh, she's like, we should. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the Chardonnay, Share Me Wine. Shout out to her. Shout out, Share Me. It's really good.
Yes, I love wine.
I do love it. I know that seemed like a commercial, but I've been drinking on it. And I was like, she better drink her damn
Ooh,
wine.
this is good.
It is good, right?
This is really good.
Yeah, my girl did her damn thing. Okay. So let's pause from that really quick because I want to ask you some questions about being a woman as we're talking about the dynamics of women. And so I'm going to ask, like, Steph, well, how do you feel about your body? I think that that's something that we don't get to talk about a lot, or it's like, I feel great and I'm supposed to accept everything at this point. Or, you grew up seeing all the railroad skinnies and you feel some type of way. But right now in this current part of your life, how do you feel about your body?
I love my body. I feel after my divorce, I kind of had a little divorce glow up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a true phenomenon, let me tell you.
Talk about
And
it.
it's a true phenomenon. I feel that in my marriage, I can only speak for my marriage, right? I was in a marriage where my ex was very insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back now, I'm like, dang, I call it Betty Crocker. Like
Oh,
I was caught in a Betty Crocker world
okay.
where I was having babies, breastfeeding babies, being overweight,
Yeah.
and not feeling sexy. And my husband was okay with that
Because it kept you.
because it kept me at the house.
Mm,
So when COVID hit and I lost 50 pounds and I got my body back,
mm,
there started to be problems there because I started to go back into who I really was. And I feel like I lost myself in my marriage
mhm.
and I became a diluted version of myself.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2.
You have 2 kids.
Mhm.
Over the course of how long was your marriage?
The marriage was 10 years and I literally was popping kids out for 6 years.
Okay, so you
So
have 2.
I have 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Wow. Okay.
And we lost one in between.
One in between. I guess that's what I was getting at.
Right.
If you kept popping out kids, there had to be
Yeah.
another child.
Yeah.
Did you lose your kid in the womb or after birth?
In the womb.
In the womb.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How did that make you feel?
Horrible because I had abortions in my
Mhm.
20s,
Mhm.
which I got into detail in the book.
Mhm.
And it made me feel like that was my punishment for ending other lives,
Yeah.
that a life that I had created was taken from me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I talk in depth about that in the book and how I needed counseling and how I spent hours, researching, babies go to heaven and, all this stuff. But yeah,
How do you feel like that affected your marriage?
I don't think he really cared, to be honest with you. I
Mhm.
feel like he kind of just passed it. He was like, it's gone now. Let's just move on.
Yeah.
But, he's a man. So he physically wasn't feeling, the detachment of a little body coming out and all that.
Yeah.
But again, to his defense, I mean, I'm sure he hurt to his extent, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like mine, right?
Mhm.
So,
And so your oldest and then the child that passed and then
mhm.
your youngest.
And then our youngest, yeah.
Does the oldest know about the child that has passed?
She does. And I have a crazy story. After the baby passed, one night she was 3 at the time. She woke up and she said, "Mommy, I have a sister." And I said, "What do you mean you have a
Oh,
sister?"
shit.
She said, "I have a sister in heaven." And sure enough, it was a girl. We never told her
That it was a girl.
that it was a girl. And she said, "I have a sister in heaven. She's in heaven."
What
She would
was
just
your
say this.
reaction?
I was shocked. I was shocked, but I do believe in the afterlife,
Of
and
course.
I do have a whole chapter on ghosts in the book and aliens too, if you want to talk about that.
I love aliens.
Yeah. And now it's starting to come out more from the Pentagon, thank God. Because
Yeah.
everything is starting to really come out. But I have a whole chapter on UFOs and all that in the
Okay.
book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They're
Okay.
real. They're real, people.
They're real. All that shit is real.
All that shit is real.
It is real.
Yes.
I always say I want to be the first person to fuck an alien, but I'm probably not gonna be because somebody
Girl,
probably,
you probably already
has.
did.
It's a Men in Black type situation.
Right.
Okay, so let's jump back to this first job you had at 21, because you're waiting to be 23, and you're physically having to take kids out of homes for whatever reason it is. So now you're 23, and you're like, you wake up 23 that morning, and you're like, let's go. Like, how did it actually go?
So, I mean, it's very simple. You just apply. And for references, I don't want to name any agencies because I worked for practically all of them.
They all had 3 letters, right?
They all had 3 letters, yes. And so anyway, you apply, you go through the process, you do the testing, you do the polygraph, you go to training.
Do you think polygraphs really work?
Hell no.
Okay.
Hell no. I think, so polygraph measures respiration, heart rate, heartbeat, and expansion of your chest or whatever, and all that good stuff.
And if
so
you're
no.
cold-blooded, you could just be like,
yeah, no.
Did you? Absolutely not.
Like I've had so many polygraphs done on me that I can lie and pass one because I know how it works. Right?
Can you tell the truth and make them feel like you're lying?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the opposite thing we always see in movies and stuff.
But and I think polygraph is so inaccurate. It's just a long, old system. There's newer systems now, but they haven't transitioned over to it. It's called iDetect. But I think it's all bullshit. And I do feel a lot of people are not getting opportunities that they deserve because they fail a polygraph. And there's a lot of people that just are giving up on trying to work for the government.
And people just feel guilty, right? Like I always talk about like the Black person that goes in the store and feels guilty walking around and you're getting followed. And I remember and I was like, listening to like NPR and stuff, everybody knows that's how I started podcasting. Because I'm listening to NPR and I'm like, oh my God, I can do this.
Yeah.
But listening to NPR and, people talking about being in like a store or something and I was like, surely that doesn't happen anymore. And me and my friend were at a store like a month ago or something, just picking up some stuff for a talking stick for some stuff with Melanin Minds.
Yeah.
And this lady legit was kind of like peeking around. And I was like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
And in that moment, I always talk about like having the audacity of a white male millennial and swagging it out like you would do for whoever you are. And I go, I feel really uncomfortable right now. Right. I was like, I feel like I'm being watched and I don't like it. Like I said it just like that, loud enough where she could hear me. And she kind of like fiddled with something and walked away. And I was like, God damn it, that still happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the polygraph. You're passing. You do all the standard stuff.
And then I did undercover work for 2 years. And it was corporate fraud. Go figure. And so corporate fraud is embezzling, money laundering, all that good stuff.
Did you get to do some of the embezzling while you were undercover?
So my thing was I was always following you around and listening to you and taking footage of you. So I did old school surveillance.
Okay.
Like I was in the van with the camera, following you to the grocery store, following you to the kids' playground, following you everywhere. So I did all that.
What was your favorite snack while you were doing surveillance?
Oh my God, this is an old school one. Corn nuts. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
I know.
Grab a bag of corn nuts and bust a nut.
I don't know why. Look, it couldn't be Cheetos because that makes your stomach hurt. And I talk about this in the book and people's minds get blown. Women are not supposed to be doing undercover work.
Okay.
In a van, okay?
But women do undercover.
But we do.
You do prostitution.
We do. But here's the thing. When you're in a van for 12, 20 hours, you got to go to the bathroom. And we're not like men. You can't pee in a cup. So I always I share this with people. We cat box it. We litter cat box it.
Really?
Yeah. We literally had a bucket with kitty litter and we would just pee in the bucket. You sit in the bucket and you pee.
Oh.
Because you can't leave your spot.
Well, for camping, they have that thing that you can put down there.
But then you still gotta
flash anybody.
You still gotta put it somewhere. like in a little bag.
Oh,
So then
the
you know,
kitty litter absorbs
right,
it, so you might
right.
as well just piss into the
You might
kitty
as well
litter.
just sit on that bucket and go for it. Yeah.
Very
And I mean, number
interesting.
2 as well.
Oh,
What do you do when you gotta go number 2?
how many people are in the van at a time?
So when we were doing it, and again, this is old school. Now
Yeah.
surveillance is totally different. I can
Yeah.
just hack into your phone and know where you're at because you're posting everything.
Right.
And all I gotta do is sit at home. Keep in mind, back then, we didn't have the technology that we have now.
Yeah.
We literally were old school
When we say back
surveillance.
then, this was like what, the early
This is okay. So
2000s?
the first iPhone came out in 2006.
Uh-huh.
And, that was touchscreen and everything. So, I mean, yeah, I graduated college 2003. So
Mhm.
this was like, yeah, 2003 until 2006.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have iPhones. The only thing we had back then was pinging. We could ping your phone off of a tower that you were getting reception from.
And get like what, a 2-mile radius or
And get in a
something?
radius of where you were transmitting from your phone.
Mhm.
And phones back then were analog. They were different. They weren't digital yet. So,
So when
yeah.
you're doing all this surveillance and stuff, I talk about on the radio show, I call it guilty pleasures, but in this case, these are like real guilty pleasures. Cause you know how sometimes like the good things to do, kind of like you knew that you shouldn't get pregnant because your parents are fucking working really hard and
Right.
this is like a thing, you're first gen and you're doing all this stuff. But now you're surveilling people that are like doing embezzlement and stuff. And in your head, like what would you have done? And what would you fixed in a crime that somebody got caught in?
Right. Like I remember I was like, man, these people are getting away with like the shit, right? And I remember thinking how easy it is to cover stuff up.
Mm,
It's very easy to cover stuff up,
yeah.
especially if you're washing money, right? And if you're washing it through a legitimate business. And I think a lot of people don't realize that as long as you don't get caught, you continue to be an offender. That's
Mhm.
with everything.
Mm.
It's like, hey, I'm going to sneak into an extra movie because nobody's watching. I already paid for one. I'm going to do it.
Right.
It's small stuff like that, but on a bigger scale. So, but I remember when I was doing surveillance, they told us if you're outside, because there's laws, right?
Yeah.
If you're outside and you can zoom in, zoom in. But be very careful because if you zoom in too much, you're now kind of breaking the laws of privacy. And back then, the
Oh.
laws were different than they are now.
Yeah, because privacy is different now.
Privacy is different now. And the presidents have filed different types of laws regarding privacy, but it was easier for us to get cell phone records, text records back then. Now you need a subpoena and it's got to go through a federal judge and all types of stuff. But now the stuff we can do now, y'all, is amazing. It's insane. Like we can hack into your phone, hack into your text messages.
And it's not illegal.
It's not illegal.
You don't need,
Instagram, Facebook.
what is it, a subpoena?
You do, but it's just easier to do it now. Yeah. We can activate your phone. We can activate your camera without you knowing. Activate your microphone. It's
Yeah.
good stuff.
She's saying it's
It's
good
good
stuff. I'm
stuff.
like,
The-
what
the
the fuck?
cyber
I'm like,
world.
turn it all off. No,
Yeah, that's why I
but
always tell people you're so trackable now. It's incredible.
yeah, it's a whole thing. And I always tell people, like, even at some point you have to decide you're waiving this shit just to get the technologies, right? Like
Right.
it's a reality. Okay, so you're peeing in a cat box in a van.
Yeah.
You did this, you said, for 2 or 3 years.
2 years.
2 years. What happens next?
I get transferred to Houston to do human trafficking.
Because Houston's a port
Because
city.
Houston is number one in human trafficking. And let me tell you, me not knowing that blew my mind.
Mhm.
Blew my mind. I didn't even know that was a thing in the US.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know it's a thing in the US. But obviously it's number one here in Houston. And I think California was like number 2 in Arizona.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I get transferred to Houston in 2008 to do
Mhm.
human trafficking interrogations and investigations. So I'm no longer undercover. I earned my stripes. I didn't die, thank God. And then now I'm doing interrogations for human trafficking. So from then until 2013 and on, I did human trafficking, interrogations, terroristic, drug dealing, cartel members, all that.
And when you say interrogation, are you talking about you're the person that went in the room and talked to the people?
Yes,
The bad guys or the people that were being trafficked?
both.
Okay.
Both.
So, really quick story, I guess, is, I volunteered for the rodeo and I was on Rodeo Express. Shout out to Rodeo Express. And a lady comes in one day and she's like, I'm here to pick up a young lady. And we're like, okay, like you still need a ticket. And she's like, no, I'm here with the cops. Da, 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 da. So she explains to the volunteers in my group that were at that part that she was coming to get a young lady that had been trafficked and they caught him. And because Houston is the fourth, about to be the third largest city in the country, and it's like number one in trafficking, port city, all that stuff, it shocked me that none of us knew the sign for help for people being trafficked. And apparently, somebody at the event knew the sign, and the young lady like bumped her or something and started like flashing that she needed help. And so the lady didn't approach, she gets authority and they like apprehend him and get her out. And it was just wild. Like even now, I'm like, ugh. It was just wild because she comes up with the little scrungy looking white lady that came to get her. And so they go across to public transportation. And like, soon as she gets across, she's like, and starts screaming and stuff. But she like legit was trafficked. And it just, one, blew my mind that we didn't know the sign. None of us did. And she walked right by us, right?
Mhm.
So fell number one on
Right.
human part.
Right.
And then number two, that um, it was I don't know if, like, when somebody's trafficked, I guess I would prefer maybe a little bit more sweeping of love, like, I don't know, private escort to the next place, but I understand that it's so much more than that that goes into it, but it just blew my mind that the person that was the abductor or the receiver of the person that's trafficked had the audacity to bring this person into such a large public setting. And
Yeah.
so, how many times was that the case for
That's
you?
how comfortable they have become.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, One of the things that blew my mind when I started working with this population was the most sought of the most sought for age for a girl is 11, right? And so let's put that in perspective. So at 11, you're still a child and you're not yet developed.
yeah,
So really, I mean, it's pedophilia.
yeah,
Like you have to, they don't want somebody who's 13, 14, 15 because you're already looking like a woman, and they don't want a little 3, 4-year old because you're still a toddler,
right.
but they want like an 11, 10-year old because you're literally a little girl. And that was the most sought after age group.
Yeah,
And that blew my mind. And the other thing that I learned was I thought that human trafficking was done by immigrants. Everybody thinks that human trafficking is done by like Mexicans or people who come from a different country.
yeah, it's
And
not.
it was actual people who have great jobs, who are huge standing in their communities, pastors, law enforcement sometime. It's people who have an addiction and a vice for little girls or
Yeah,
little boys for that matter as well.
yeah. How do you think doing like all this work has affected you, right? Because you're talking about from the age of pretty much a sophomore in high school and your boyfriend's sister, right, being brutalized and murdered, like you said, blood being drained, all this like movie
Trauma, yeah.
movie type shit, trauma type shit. How do you think that has like affected your life over time, right? Because you said that's even the reason you went into your career.
Yeah, and I talk about this. We all deal with trauma. We all go through trauma.
Yeah.
And I feel that trauma is a part of our nature and it's a part of all of our lives.
Mhm.
Granted, my trauma might have been a little bit crazier, but I feel like it painted a bigger picture for me because it was a trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Even leading till the end of the book, right? It's crazy. Like God picked me for this position in life. And really I always go back to I think God picks people who are warriors to touch, move, and inspire others
Yeah.
with their stories.
Yeah. I talk about that, like, I haven't had, like, these crazy traumas in life until I was in my 30s, like, lost my dad and then flip around to, 2022 losing my sister, like, just
Yeah.
overnight. But I really do feel like at some point, like you're saying, the universe, God, your higher power, whatever you believe in, picks people. And one of my really good friends, she was on season 2 of the podcast, Myra, talks about gallons, right? Some people are built to carry 1 gallon and some people are 10-gallon people.
Right.
And it's not saying that you're doing less or more, but your capacity is different.
Right.
And so I really do believe that when it comes to like the level of shit
Yeah.
that you're able to deal with. Cause sometimes I'm like, mine is the most tragic thing in the world. Then I meet somebody and theirs is the most tragic. Then I'm like, shit, ours ain't shit compared to this person.
Right.
And then it's like there's no comparison because
Right.
when you go back to the buckets, right? So you're in Houston now and you're doing this work with trafficking. You said something also about money laundering or what was the other one? You said trafficking and what else?
Terrorism
Okay.
and drug trafficking. Yeah.
Does any of that stuff even scare you now, knowing
No.
so much of it?
No, not at all.
Why aren't you scared?
I think I became numb
Okay.
at some point, and it became the norm, right? And so what may be normal for me may not be normal for you.
Mhm.
And I think that's why I was able to understand my husband whenever he told me his truth.
Yeah.
I was able to see where he was coming from.
His truth about you?
His truth about him.
Okay.
Yeah, which is the end of the book.
Okay.
So, are we going to talk about that?
Yeah. You talk about whatever you want. I'm here.
And this is an aha moment, right? So I'll paint it this way. My friend gets murdered, dismembered, decapitated by the cartel in Chicago.
Yeah.
Then my husband tells me that him and his family were part of the Mexican cartel.
Okay.
So that was the big secret that he told me after I wrote the book. And it was ready to go to editing, and he read it.
How long have you had this book?
So the book published November of 21.
And he read it, sometime
February of 21.
Okay. And you were married since?
2023. I'm sorry, 2013.
Oh, so it's 2013. And you had no idea. But he knew that you had dealt with the cartel and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
The day that I went to go get married, I tried to call the wedding off. And my best friend said, no, he's perfect. But I had overheard a conversation between him and his dad saying, in exact words, don't marry her. She's going to fuck us over.
Oh.
So he still married me knowing I was a federal investigator and they were part of the cartel. So I was married.
This sounds like some movie shit.
Yeah, which we did sign.
Yeah.
So
for a movie, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the book was written. It was already done. And it was getting ready to be sent to the publisher for editing.
Mhm.
And my husband was like, let me read it. I want to see the book before it goes to editing. So he reads the book and reads all the trauma that I have gone through and gets triggered by the book to tell me his truth. Now, keep in mind, this is how crazy this is. At the time it was COVID, my contracts had been canceled because nobody was traveling.
Yeah.
I was traveling to federal penitentiaries all over the US to do interrogations on terrorists, criminals, all over. I wasn't doing any work in Houston anymore because I never wanted to come back to me.
That close, yeah.
Right. So I was doing a lot of California work, Arizona work, DC work, whatever. Yeah. Now, keep in mind, the DEA, and this I will say, because I was working at the DEA office in the wire room, listening to the drug bust and the cartel that's going on here in Houston. And I come home, and I was working second shift, and I come home and he tells me, I need to tell you something. So he tells me that him and his family had been part of the Mexican cartel.
Mm-hmm.
I kid you not, I had my gun back here.
Yeah.
I went like this because I was going to kill him. And I was going to, and in my mind for a split second, I said, I'm going to kill him, have the government cover it up. But then I stopped in like a split second and I said, do what you do best and interrogate him.
Damn.
And then I said, separate wife from your expertise. Leave your emotions as a wife out the door and do what you do best. So I sat down and I said, tell me more. And for the next 2 hours, he told me everything.
Oh, I'm getting chills. I feel like I can't wait. I want to be on the set of the movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's go.
Who's playing you?
So I can only say who we're going after, but we haven't signed any deals. But Ana de Armas.
Okay.
So she was the last Cuban Bond girl.
Okay.
and she's currently on Ghosted. I want to say yes,
Yes. Okay.
Ghosted. And then our second runner up is Selena Gomez.
Second runner up is Selena Gomez.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's a third, like who would your third be? I'm thinking right now.
You know, we threw out a name of J-Lo out there. J-Lo is very expensive. I would love J-Lo to play me, but
I don't see
um,
J-Lo playing you.
yeah. And then we also have who else did we have on there? Zoe Saldana was on
Okay.
there. And then what's the girl from, oh my God, I can't think of her name.
Fast and the Furious? And
Yeah,
also,
she's older now.
Avatar?
Yes, yes. What
She's
is her
hot.
name? Yeah.
I don't know. She's hot.
She's like 6th on the list.
She's 6?
Yeah.
But she's my number 1. I met her.
Did you?
She's really
Okay.
short.
Yeah,
How tall
she
are
is.
you?
I'm only 5'4".
Yeah, I'm 5'4" too. But
Yeah, so
no,
it's all good.
she's like 5'2" or something.
Okay.
She's short, but she's hot.
Yeah, she's a badass. For sure.
Like hot, not just physically, but like just hot, like her human nature. I was like,
vibe.
oh shit.
Yeah, her vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see who is gonna play you in the movie. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I'm
back to the real
excited.
life. Okay, I'm ready.
So back to real life. He tells me his uncle was murdered, decapitated, and dismembered.
That was a trigger.
Just like my friend was. Because he was moving $1 million worth of cocaine from Texas to Boston.
White collar.
Now, let's get into perspective here. My ex-husband grew up here in Spring Branch, here in Houston. His father had a vending company business. Back in the day, vending machines were everywhere. You know, now they look a little bit different. But it's a cash flowing business.
That's clean money all day.
That's clean money.
Yeah.
So not only were they money laundering and washing money, but they also had warehouses where they were storing candy and all that good stuff.
I
knew nothing about this. But here's the thing. I trusted my husband with our finances.
Yeah.
And I was busy having babies, breastfeeding, running my own company, interrogating, fat and happy, and doing overnight investigations, traveling because I was traveling a lot, doing my own interrogations. I trusted him. I trusted in him. We got married, but he was hiding all this from me. So when he tells me everything, I was like, I literally, my entire life flashed before my eyes, and really was because I was still part of the government.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, you know, I have to report this. And at this point, it became me and my babies against him because now I have to take care of myself. So when I reported this to my boss must have been silent for what seemed like 10 minutes because they didn't even know what to do with that information. Like, who dropped the ball? Not only did I drop the ball, right? Because I'm considered a world-class interrogator, yet I'm sleeping and married to this cartel member, right? What kind of expert is that, right? Ooh. But I get investigated every 5 years because I have a top secret clearance.
Yeah.
So who dropped the ball down the road? Somebody knew about this. And that's probably what's going into book 2. Because I then went under federal investigation for 7 weeks. Not my ex, not his father or family,
but you.
Me, because I gave the oath to the government.
Damn. Okay, so in this 7-week span, what happened?
I had to do a written and verbal pretty much statement. I was flown to DC. I was polygraphed and interrogated. I was now on the other side of the table.
Damn. Polygraph, we know don't work. Interrogation. Like, what kind of interrogation are we talking about?
They needed to make sure that I didn't marry purposeful and that I didn't marry into the cartel to steal secrets and go back and forth. Now, keep in mind, I was working at the DEA when he told me this.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the severity of it. Like, you can't make this shit up. You know, even Hollywood was like, this is all true shit.
Like, so in my head, I'm thinking, what's that movie, True Lies or something?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking a True Lies / what is the Olivia Pope shit / Queen of the South. Like,
yeah,
it's like a clusterfuck of all that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, talk about the government dropping the ball. I've had a top secret clearance since I've been 23. I'm 40 now.
And this happened like a lick ago.
We were married 10 years and nobody saw anything.
So at least 2 investigations.
Nobody said anything. No, and that's what blew my mind. I mean, my bosses, they couldn't wrap their mind around it.
Yeah.
So when everything was said and done, they said, okay, she wasn't involved. They tapped my phone. They looked at my emails. They saw the conversations I had with my friends of me crying and saying, how did I miss this? Right. And they said, okay, you have two choices. You either divorce him or you're blacklisted. Pick one.
Oh.
So I said, where do I sign? I took my babies and I left, didn't take any of his money. But before I left, I said, I need you to sign this authorization right here, honey boo. And he says, she's not taking any of my money. This guy had so much money that he was hiding from me.
That you had no idea
I
about.
had no
God
idea. But I was like,
damn.
look, he signed an authorization
Yeah.
giving me permission to say the story in my book.
Oh,
I
nice.
called the publisher back and I said, give me the motherfucking book back. I'm adding 2 more chapters to the book with everything that's going on right now. The CEO of the publishing company said, Angelica, you are under federal investigation. And I said, I don't care. What can I possibly lose at this point?
Yeah.
Book comes back. I add 2 chapters to it. The book ends with me finding out and going under federal investigation. On to book 2. I've started book 2.
Excited.
I'm very excited.
No, I'm excited.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
saying
Oh, yeah.
for the audience, we're
For the
excited.
So then, long story short, I end up publishing the book. So I'm going to give you a timeline. The book comes out November of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working for Department of Defense, right? When the book published.
Okay.
I get suspended from work December, just a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
In January, I get terminated from all my contracts under Department of Defense. I get blacklisted from Department of Defense.
In over 2 months.
Yeah. They don't say it's the book. It's definitely the book. But they say, oh, there was an investigation done. There was some writing concerns on a high level case. Let me tell you, I've been working in this industry for 16 years. There is nothing wrong with my reports. It was the book, but they can't say it was the book. So I get blacklisted from Department of Defense. So for that following year, I literally lived off book sales.
Wow.
The book hits bestseller. In August of last year, I signed a contract with Hollywood to make it into a movie. And guess what? The authorization that my husband signed, he can't sue me for anything because he gave me permission to write his story in my book.
Is he mad about it?
He's mad about it now because now his family wants to collect on what could potentially be millions from making this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But he signed the authorization because I didn't take any of his money. I didn't even keep our house. He kept it. So,
well, all I have to say is like we're friends now. So if you get a jet, I just want to be on the
let's
jet.
go.
I'm like encouraging all my girlfriends to get jet. I'm like, get a motherfucking jet.
Right.
I don't even need the jet. I just want to be on the jet, and I'll be the bartender. We'll get Shermy to bring fucking wine, and I'll like make some amazing martinis or something.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Wow. Okay. So all of this has happened, and one thing that comes to mind, and I always like talking about this because I feel like as women and for women, especially in America where things are so like boxy, right? Like it's box.
Right.
You need to be a Latina and you must do this and you're supposed to sit like and your hair should be all this crazy shit. And in the world you were in, peeing in litter boxes, that's going to be my new thing every time.
I mean, fighting for your life, practically.
Fighting for your life. Moving around, having a very focused career. How do you hang on to your femininity? And how do you even define that? Like, what is femininity to you? How do you hang on to it? What do you do to feel that?
It's been very difficult because I always get told I have a lot of masculine energy. And I always tell people I have a masculine energy because I had to remove myself and my children from a controlling marriage for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on survival mode. When I left that house, it was me and my babies. I was in mama bear mode.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, femininity is being in line with being fully self-expressed as a woman. And what that means is I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to wear what I'm going to wear. I'm going to say what I want to say and not give a damn about fear of judgment.
I love it. Okay, so this is a question. And I mean, you've been talking about it for a while, but if you had to look at it, would it be love or money? Like if you had to pick one, would you rather be crazy rich or deeply in love.
Deeply in love.
Why?
Because I don't think I know what love is.
Damn.
Because this 10-year marriage was not love. It
Mm.
couldn't be. Before I walked on the aisle, it was already a fraudulent marriage. So I'm out there. I'm out there, girl.
Single, sexy.
Single, sexy, mingling. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I haven't lost hope that there is the perfect match for me out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do want to build with somebody.
Yeah.
And I want to be in that vibe, you know? Like what I don't know if I really know what love is, because what I know was love was not love, you
Yeah,
know?
it couldn't
But
have been for
it couldn't
you.
have been, right? But I'm open and I'm hopeful, and I didn't let my past or my relationship define my representation of what a loving partnership should look
Mhm.
like.
Do you feel like you're, like, sexually enlightened?
Yes. God, yes.
Why do you say that?
Oh my God. To be honest,
Yeah.
okay. When I was in my marriage, we weren't very explorative.
Yeah.
We were very kind of meat and potatoes type
Mhm.
a couple.
I call it Wonder Bread. It's like
Wonder bread, sure,
yeah.
whatever. Saltines, I mean, sour grapes, whatever. But I felt like when I got catapulted into the dating world,
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh my God, I've been missing out on so much.
Yeah.
Because I had been with somebody for so long, right? But it wasn't exciting. It wasn't spicy. It wasn't, you know, and I explored. I definitely
Mhm.
explored in my singleness, my singularity. But yeah, now I feel like I'm fully self-expressed sexually, emotionally, physically.
It's
Yeah.
freeing.
It's
It's very
freeing.
freeing. I always tell
Yeah.
people being sexually enlightened, it doesn't need to be described as being like a freak. Like,
Yeah, no,
what the
not at
fuck is
all.
that? Like, whatever. So there's so much stuff that you open up to, whether it's fearful or not, you're doing it. And I love that about you. It's one of the things I love about you and
Thank
barely
you.
know you. And we'll get to know each other more because we're besties
Yeah.
now. But what's something right now that you really want people to understand about you that may not be being expressed through your book and your movie and these speaking engagements that's just kind of sitting with you and you're holding tight to your hip, but maybe can help somebody as you're going through these multiple transitions at once?
Right. I think my biggest message would be I'm really just another single mom. I'm really just another single mom hustling and grinding and trying to get my babies, you know, out there and taken care of.
Yeah.
And although from the outside looking in, it looks like I got it together, there's some days I feel like I don't, because I have so much on my plate. I'm trying to build a movie, do a course, sell books, sell audibles, take care of babies, make jiu-jitsu classes, go to the musical recital, and
A fucking
balancing,
recital.
right, and balancing all of this at once, and then trying to look sexy and fine is hard.
Mm,
It's
mm, mm.
hard.
So speaking of sexy and fine, like what do you like about yourself right now?
I like my freedom.
Mm,
I value my freedom over everything. I am motivated by freedom.
mm. How do you define freedom?
For me, freedom is having the ability to do anything and everything that I want without having any limits set by anybody or anyone or
Mm,
anything. Whether it be I don't work a 9 to 5.
which is
I
great.
I go to the gym whenever I want to go. I have time for my kids. I have time to write. I have time to do everything that I want, and I'm not controlled by any society norms or any corporate job. So I value my freedom.
What's a society norm that you like uphold?
Uh,
I'll tell you mine while you're thinking. Mine is I totally think guys should always take out the trash. Society norm.
oh
I'm like, take
God.
out the motherfucking trash. Like when you come in my house, just get the trash. It's fine.
Yes, for
That's
sure.
like one of those things like
Yes. I mean
you
that's more of a gender more of a gender
but it's
role,
been
right?
normalized in society,
Oh my
yeah. And I
God.
feel like that's part of me holding on to my femininity is like
Yeah.
I don't like
For
taking
me,
out the
it's pumping
trash.
the gas. I
Oh
hate
God.
pumping gas. And you know why I
Yeah.
hate it? Because my ex would never pump my gas. And my dad pumped my gas growing up.
Yeah.
So it became
The
it
thing you missed.
it became a thing I miss. And so now I'm always like, just pump my gas.
Just pump my
Just pump
yeah.
my gas. I don't want to be out here in these heels in this 100-degree weather, dying, pumping this thing. Like, just pump my gas.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I look, we talk about it all the time, like on the dating relationship group discussion on my radio
Yeah.
show, it's like it's a strong women. It's just the simple shit. Like,
Yeah.
bruh, it's 3 simple things you could do, and I will be yours forever.
Yes, let me share this because I think a lot of men who see me think that I value money and status and all that.
Mhm.
The things that I seek do not cost money.
They're free.
They're very, very, very free and very simple. Transparency, consistency, and reciprocity.
Damn.
That's it.
Damn. Okay, so what's something that you're working on yourself right now, or you wish that you liked about yourself that maybe other people see that you've identified?
So for me, I'm a competitor. I'm a fitness competitor. So bodily, I do deal with a lot of bodily issues because I go from being on stage to not being on stage.
Yeah.
So my body tends to change,
Fluctuate and all that?
fluctuate and all
Okay.
that. Um, and also not knowing the industry that I'm in right now, and I'm just learning from it. So I'm an executive producer. I've never been an executive producer.
And this is, like, overnight,
And this is
right?
overnight. So
Yeah.
I'm learning everything that goes into negotiating, creating, signing, and just building from the ground up to a full-fledged movie, like a multi-million-dollar movie. I'm learning everything. So it's like being thrown into the wolves and be like, either sink or swim.
Ooh.
So,
All right, so this season 4, it's all about the dynamics of women, and
mhm.
when you think about that, what do you think our dynamics are?
I think our dynamics are definitely strength. That comes to mind because we bear children. God or, the higher being created us to be able to give life
Mhm,
and survive it. And I think we're just so powerful. Strength being physically, mentally, and emotionally. I think we get told we're very emotional, but we're also very strong because
mhm,
we can handle anything and everything.
mhm.
And I think that's something that really needs to be capitalized is our strength as women.
And just the natural shit that we deal with to day to day.
Yeah.
So you have taken us like this. Wah!
Roller coaster,
Yeah,
right?
but I mean that again, strength, that's your
Yeah.
life. So sum up the last like 365 days. So back to last year this time, all the way to this year this time, 365 days. How are you summing that up?
Madness. I feel like last year was my high and
Mhm.
this year's my low. I
Wow.
was on 90 flights last year. I was at every single red carpet event. I was at parties, red carpets, podcasts, trying to get myself out there to get this deal signed.
Yeah.
And once I got it signed, I decided to take a step back. And so this year I haven't done any red carpet events. Um, but that's the grind and hustle I had to do to get where I want to get to.
Yeah,
So
and it goes back to what you were saying about that thing you want people to understand is you're just a single mom, and I say "just" very
yeah,
loosely, right?
yeah.
But when you think about it, we always talk about, like, this public eye thing. I tell people all the time, like, I'm actually an introvert, and I like sitting quietly, and one of my most comforting times, even during production, is when me and my team were just sitting, hanging out before, and then I have this peak of nervousness, and I no longer black out, but there was a point that I
Where
blacked
you
out.
did. Oh,
Yeah, because I
wow.
was just, like, so I still get nervous, like, I
Yeah,
don't it's something I don't hide because I think that too many of these journeys are, like, glorified, right? So,
yeah,
there's that. So, the madness lasts 365 days, so let's go forward 365 days. What are your expectations, your hopes? What in your story do you want to start coming into fruition? What part of this journey are you manifesting and
yeah.
claiming?
So obviously, getting into production with filming,
Mm.
I think people don't realize, people are like, oh, when's the movie coming out? I'm like, it is a whole production. I mean, it starts from like we don't even have a script yet. We're
Yeah.
still looking at scripts because they're coming in from, highly capable people. They're fighting to see who's gonna get the script.
So how do scripts work? So what do they read your book and
So they
then
read the book and then we pick 5 of the top script writers in the industry.
Mhm.
These are like Oscar winning script writers.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "All right guys, go write a script." And then they come back with the script and then we and the executive team sits around and picks a script.
Yeah. What are your
So
5 must-haves that you need to see in a script? In the script for your
yes,
book?
that's a great question. I really want them to depict the trauma as
Mhm.
a child. I
Mhm.
was molested as a child,
Yeah.
that is in there, and being afraid and, depression. I really wanna dig in deep with mental health. I dealt with depression, major depression after my friend died,
Yeah.
and, therapy and all that. I think all of that stuff is not talked about enough,
Mhm.
you know? So, definitely that portion of it, and really, really digging in on the resilience part, that I don't have to hate my ex, you know? You have to have forgiveness and compassion for people,
Yeah.
because if you don't forgive somebody, you're carrying all that anger with you in life,
Yeah.
and it's rotting you from the inside out. And all these grudges and I hate him and all that stuff, it's just it's depleting you and it's deteriorating you. And so that the second book is called The Power of Forgiveness.
Ooh.
So I talk about how I needed to forgive him to move on, not for me, but for the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So powerful. All right, girl. Okay. Y'all. This is season 4. This is how we're doing the dynamics of women. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you to all the LaRae Infinity Let's Talk podcast listeners that have been over the years. I've been doing this for years and I took a long break. And so we're back. And so I appreciate you being on.
Thank you.
And, y'all know how this goes. Like, as you're moving through the world and you're figuring out who you're going to be, how you're going to tell your story, how you're going to express your journey in your life, and how you love and how you choose to survive and grieve and all that stuff. Make sure that you're always telling your story and being your own brand and living your truth and standing in your moment.
Thank you. All right, y'all. My name is Angelica Robles. I am 40 years old. I hope y'all enjoyed my story of tragedy to resilience. You just listened to my story, and I live my truth and stand in my moment on the LaRae Infinity Let's Talk podcast, season 4, The Dynamics of Women.
The Dynamics of Women, y'all.
Podcast
Thank
season
you so
4.
much. I'm sure you just watched this amazing interview with Angelica, and it was just so great. But she kept talking about this book. Bestseller, traveling around the world. It's turning into a movie. But I think she has something for me. What you
Yes.
got, girl?
So I have the book here,
Yes.
and this is it's of course signed. And for those that don't know, it's got augmented reality.
Oh,
So here you
I'm
go.
like, give it to me.
Yeah, so it's got augmented reality. So augmented reality is pretty much a video inside the book that has a QR code.
Wow.
And so you download the app, and then there's pretty much a little synopsis in a movie inside the book with your app.
Through
So.
these brown eyes. All right. Only on LaRae Infinity Let's Talk podcast. Signed. Thank you. I appreciate you.